lunch and learn on Thursdays until end of April. I'll communicate more information on the chat.
Perfect. And I just failed at my first task of recording. I just started, so it's no problem. It's just me talking. You haven't missed anything, so it's not a problem. So and also in our friends from GDG, Archie is there. So and Gold CNCF ambassador. So thanks for hopping in.
Stacy, thanks for organizing it.
No problem. All right, so we'll get going with our agenda. So we're just gonna make sure that share my screen, and we'll actually get going. So here we go. Not sharing audio this time, so cool. Don't need to. Awesome. To go in presentation mode. Yes, sir. So we're good to go. All right. So again, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll just go through a few things. So it's the rise of the config connector talk today. Like we do with our past session, there's a few. We do a few cool blog post type of things, gathering some information. Since we're almost everybody back in the office or on and off, it's still I call it like the coffee machine talk, but it's something we're going to cover there like we usually do. So we've covered this one. So Udo and myself as core for GDG Cloud Montreal. From previous slide, you saw the friends of GDG Cloud Montreal in Ottawa. So just straight there. Again, like we'll meet the speakers later on. Just one important thing, we met the speakers. Myself, Chris, and Sean. They'll have the chance to intro themselves properly when we hit their section. But I'm super happy that they joined us today. Important thing during the event, if you need to ask questions, you can see in Bevy at in the top right, you'll have chat attendees and stuff like that. So in the chat section, you have general, you have QA and DMs. So in the the Q&A section, this is where you can actually ask your question. So people can monitor on our side and actually either during the presentation ask question or actually answer you there, or pick up the answers, pick up the information there, and then like try to answer them either through our Slack channel or any other channel that we have, so we can go get those information out to you. So important stuff. So we're just gonna hop on, and I want to be mindful of the time. So our friends can actually have full time to do their demo. So it's been a while. So there's a few cool posts that I found worthy of sharing. So wanted to make sure, like we usually do, to go through them, and it goes from everything. Like there's I found like this was really interesting because it's something that we see out there. So it's the Decathlon story. For those people who don't know Decathlon, it's like it's a French company. It's all like sportswear. If you need like a tent or a backpack, whatever, they do everything. So and they're also in Canada. So they have I know they're in Montreal on the South Shore, but they have a GCP story, which is the important part, not the backpack. Unless they want to send me one with anyway. But so the important thing is that they have they had a problem. I mean, like we have many users. There's a lot of projects going on. So how can we keep control of those projects? How do we actually, is there a way for us to create that type of let's say a vending machine type of things for project creation, which will make sure that they follow like predefined guardrails, that security won't be an issue and all those things. So they have a great story around this. For those who don't know, like I'm going to go through the stories at the end. You're going to have all the links. I'll paste the link into the chat also, because of course they're super long links and it's like nobody's going to remember them or going to type them by hand. So you'll have them there. So that's why if there's no links, you'll have everything in the end. So don't worry. So Decathlon, great story about that and the need of using like a GCP project factory. So if you're a big organization, you want to make sure that everybody follows standards, can just like, hey, I need a project for X. Is it production or not? This is, of course, leveraging Terraform and all the cool stuff that's around automation. So that's a great story. So a great read. So please have a look. Just gonna keep on going. Just segueing into automation and keeping into that focus. A great way of, we've mentioned Terraform, but a great way of doing automation in GCP is actually, and in a secure way, which is super important, is actually leveraging, Cloud Build Terraform and let's say the open policy agent, like the OPA that we have there with the little helmet. So basically, the idea, and just to keep it simple, is like TLDR. You can actually go see the links and read the article properly instead of hearing me talking about it. So within Cloud Build, I can actually have a, let's call it a runner, or a builder that can use Terraform directly baked in, so I don't have to provide anything. So I kind of control, configure, like versioning drift of Terraform by doing that. But also in that process, I can use the OPA check command to actually check with some policies that was written with the OPA standard against like a Terraform plan. Like I do a Terraform plan, I have a JSON output, I convert it, then I feed it to OPA, and it checks it, say, oh, like this doesn't fit with our policy, so like your plan and will fail. So if your plan fail, of course your apply will fail. So that way you're actually able to put security in your flow of infrastructure provisioning or anything else that you do with this. So that's, even though the icon is at the right, it's what we call shift security left. So when you hear that, that's actually what it's all about. Gonna go quick on this one, and again, like, well, I'm a big fan of everything Pravanka does in terms of drawing. I think she's awesome. This is a great way of like what's going on in CI/CD within GCP. So there's so many moving pieces. This actually really kind of captures everything super well, and what you would do, in terms of building a CI/CD pipeline. So you can go from source to cloud build. You can do like GCR for your containers, binary authorization, attestation, all those things like trusted image or not. If you're doing Kubernetes, it's a full-fledged set of tools, and this article like actually covers it really well. I don't think there's cloud deploy in there. I know that Mr. Sanders is on the attendees and is going to be super disappointed. But he did our last presentation last year. So, but that's also on the CDs type of things with like a scaffold type of framework is something that's in there if you're targeting GKE as a target. So leveraging cloud deploy. So have a look at this one. I think it's really interesting. So on the other interesting side of things, and quickly on this one, there's everybody, like people are using Draw.io or Lucidchart, or like everybody has their tool. Actually, Google came up with something that's based on Excalidraw type of format. So basically, it's all web-based. You can do your diagrams, all the icons, everything is there. It's pretty sweet. You can export it so that, of course, there's not that everybody, like 5 people in the same document type of things, but it's a great tool to actually get your diagram fast and going. So have a look. It's pretty neat and straight from Google. From the blog post and everything that I was trying to capture, like when I do, like I look at the blog posts on every Monday when when they come out most of the time. There was one that was really interesting, and it's really like, if you're like, just think, and the use case is really some things, like if you have like 1 petabyte of data, and I'm talking like bucket data, so object store. If you're in US multi-region, that's like $26,000 a month on average. And within this, you might actually have duplicate objects. But how do you actually find those duplicate objects? So that blog post is about leveraging hashes and e tags. So with a script, of course, so that it's hard to like find the name. But actually, if the tag or the hashes are the same, then you know it's a duplicate. So if you can actually clean up house, you will draw your bill down from 26,000 to whatever, but still a great way to say, hey, how do I find duplicates and buckets? That's a great way to look into this. Nice little trick, nice little script. So have a look. It's pretty cool. Another one here in the cool blog post. The other one was bucket. Like this one is more on the Kubernetes side. It's really like, does like K's actually delivers on his promises of portability? That's a sensible topic. Depending on who you talk. So I saw Archie dropped off because he said, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm just going to leave. Kidding. But no, that's a great article actually. And the answer is yes, it does. So this article is really somebody say, hey, we have stuff on Azure and we want to move it to GCP. Of course, we have some Postgres and stuff like that, but I mean, it's really on the Kubernetes side. Like if I take stuff in case, the way it's set up, and I bring it from, let's say, EKS or KS to GKE, like, does this thing actually like move the way it's supposed to? So the answer is yes. I'm kind of spoiling the article there, but it's a great way of finding that, hey, this is how we do it and how we've planned it also. So pretty sweet if you're actually talking about migrating from one cloud provider to another, or if you want to duplicate an environment, have a look. Pretty sweet. This one is really specific, but it's a there's there's a thing. Yeah, it's called NetOps. It's basically network operation. But there are tools within GCP, which is called the network visibility tools that you can use to see actually what's going on, like the way your network is set up. And then it's not just per project. You can actually see dependencies, cross project, and everything that you have. So if you're doing NetOps, which is, well, what's going on, and if there's an outage on the network, like this tool actually for visibility can actually help you maintaining your SLA, because NetOps is multiple things from like diagnostic insights and RCAs, like what the heck actually happened. But this tool is a great way to get you that visibility. So if somebody said, like, what actually my network looks like? Well, actually this tool is baked in GCP. So have a look, it's pretty sweet. And again, like, it's not bound to a project. You can actually see other projects that are related. So again, pretty cool. Have a look. Segue into networking. So, well, there's so many options in networking. Again, Pravanka, thank you for the diagram. If you want to have an idea of everything that's out there in terms of network connectivity within GCP itself, I mean, like, if you're doing peering, if you're doing like interconnect, cloud VPN, legacy, or the HA1, or just like really raw network interconnectivity, this is really like, it's going to give you like the TLDR. Again, it's going to be linked in my list of links, so that way you can have a look. I'm almost done. So you guys get ready. So and also, well, in terms of control and everything, well, we've talked about security and all that, but there's a new thing about Cloud SQL, which you have like IAM conditions and tag. So not to actually read the slides, but just to give you an idea, is that just think about when, like, if you do firewall rules and you use tags that you want to apply for an instance, think of that concept of granular. It's like, if you're tagged with this, I can allow you to do this. But would it be cool to actually do that, but within Cloud SQL for your users? If you have like two Cloud SQL instances running and all that, well, that's fine. But I mean, like, if we shoot wider and then you have like multiple clusters, multiple users on this, it kind of gets like to be a nightmare. If I actually be able to group people together with those tags, it's going to make the operation, like the day two, way better. So have a look, and also think about that. Like, if you see the database, you have to water it later. That's super important. So, well, we've talked about tags and control. Nice little segue. This thing's in preview, but there's denied policies in place right now that you can actually play with. So there's a lot of IAM roles and custom roles you can do. Say who can do what, but what about like what you can't do? Sometimes it's easier to say you can't do this than say you're allowed to do this, right? So with this deny policy, it's actually something that you can do. You have an example there. Again, just want to be mindful of time. Just have a look in the links. But it's a pretty neat feature. Again, sometimes it's easier just deny everything than to allow everything and forget something. In terms of, I'm almost there. I think I said that before, but yeah, I'm almost there. I know. So there's one thing again quickly on this one. If you spin a GCE instance, you're able to you're able to stop it. So basically, you release RAM, you release CPU, but you keep the storage, but you lose state. So what about if there was a way GA to actually keep the state if you're stopping a VM? But what about like you're just pausing it or suspending it? That's exactly what that is, and they're doing it in a really nice way, so it doesn't mess up your OS, your boot OS of your instance. It's done on the side, so some Google magic and all that. But again, like if you want to keep state, that's the best way to do that. So have a look. And I was talking about shifting security left. That's exactly what this statement is about. This article is pretty sweet. Again, I'm just going to sum it up pretty quickly. let's say let's say you want to make sure that the infrastructure you're putting in place is actually getting validated against, let's say, security command center from policies that you have in place, or anything that could just like pop up as issues. This little project that was made in the blog post is basically you having your source code, your cloud build that's deploying in a test project the infrastructure you're supposed to test, so you can actually get those metrics of, is what I'm doing, is that an issue? And then it will report it back in the health checker, which is a cloud function that will take that data in and actually give you some input. So a great way of shifting security left, meaning that get security involved at the beginning, so that way you don't get blocked at the end. It's true, I'm done. So yeah, so those are all the links. So just like use your you have to remember all of those. I'll just take that. I have them in a text file. I'll just paste it in the chat, so that way you can go through it. So thanks for your patience on listening to me ranting about everything that's cool about GCP. But the important stuff is actually coming in right now with our friends Chris and Sean. So you guys, I'll invite you to unmute yourself, and after that, I'll let you intro yourself. So with our friend Chris and Sean, who's gonna talk about Config Connector, we'll basically cover those things. What is KCC? Solving the chicken and the egg. If you didn't know what's a chicken and an egg, come on. So solving the chicken and the egg problem with config controller, packaging with KPT, a demo, and Q&A. So from now on, I'll stop sharing and give you full control, Chris and Sean. The stage is yours.
All right. Power is mine.
Yes.
Thanks, Stacy. So let's get slide up there. It looks like it's showing for me. I got a thumbs up for yes. So thank you for that wrap up. I completely forgot about the Branca's architecture diagram tool. I should have used that for some of the things in here. So appreciate the warm up, and apologies to everyone for my cobbled together slides thing. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Really excited to help kick off the year or the meetup season with the first meetup this year. So that's awesome. For the people I don't know, my name's Chris. I'm a customer engineer with the Canadian public sector team. I'm based here in Ottawa, and super excited also to be co-presenting publicly for the first time with my illustrious colleague, Sean, who will let introduce himself.
Thanks, Chris. Yep. For those that don't know me, probably everybody, I'm Sean Mitchell, also a customer engineer up here in Canada. I'm also a solutions engineer on our US team as well in public sector. So Chris and I work hand in hand on many internal projects.
And now we got to share some of the nuggets of what we're working on. So this is pretty cool. I'm very excited about this. Generally speaking, Config Connector is yeah, super interesting for me, and very exciting, as Sean can probably attest to. Something I rarely don't talk about. So I'm going to try to stay on topic. I'm going to try not to go on too many tangents, so bear with me if I do. So the outline is here. It's very similar to what Stacy hit up, except I forgot to change the Y config controller to the chicken and egg problem. So slight discrepancy there, but I think hopefully he'll forgive me. So with that, I'm going to dig right into it. We have a fun demo at the end, and we get to learn a lot about KEPT and KCC along the way. So first off, what is Config Connector? Simply put, and I'll start off with a wall of text, and there's some more fun things going on down the way. Config Connector is a combination of a series of things. The first bit is it exposes a KRM of GCP resources. So for those of you who are familiar with Kubernetes, KRM would be like the YAML that describes the pod or deployment or service. So now we got to do that with GCP resources, right? So you got to describe everything as data and then give it to, so like we want a Kubernetes cluster, or say a BigQuery instance, or pub sub notifications. We can describe that in YAML. This is really awesome and cool, and we can do some fun things, which I'll talk about in a bit. But on the back end, you have the fun CRDs, or the custom resource definitions, that describe these objects in Kubernetes, and they do the connection with Google Cloud to create the resources, tear them down, update them, do all that fun stuff. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Kubernetes, CRDs are a fun way to extend Kubernetes, the Kubernetes API. So out of the bat, or out of the gate, you have pod services, the things I just described, but you can create your own resources for Kubernetes. And you have to create your own reconcilers, controllers, and things. And that's what the CRDs are. So that's just our custom backend for Kubernetes to do all this KCC magic, which is quite exciting. And then what it looks like, kind of at a high level, is you have take your inputs. So you have your kubectl, and what we'll talk about later today, kept. If you've gone down the GitOps route, you may have config management, or if you're really keen and you've built your own API or CLI client, you take the KRM, you dump it into the API server, it'll go talk to the backend CRDs, and then on the other end in your GCP environment, you'll get whatever you just described, which is, I think, really cool, especially being that you can really just take that same workflow that you theoretically are familiar with using Kubernetes, and apply that to your infrastructure. And you get all kinds of fun things like the reconciliation loops, statefulness, and just being able to describe everything in YAML, so you get that data input and then put it in either Git repo or do something imperative like with kept and apply it to your cluster. And this is what it looks like. So thankfully, the autopilot definition fits this slide very well. Some of them can be a little longer, but this is what it would take to write your code for a autopilot cluster that's going to deploy in US West 1. So not too scary, not too much writing. So you give this to the Kubernetes API, and then you would go and provision it, assuming you have permissions to do that. So how do I do this? When I first saw this, I was like, now I need to be able to do this. This is really cool. So this is kind of the flow we're looking at, right? So we have Kubernetes cluster, has the CRDs. We take kept, or our GitOps approach with ACM or whatever else you're using, gets it in the cluster, and then the fan out produce stuff. So projects, folders, cloud run, you name it. Cloud build, unfortunately for David, I don't think it does cloud deploy yet, but I'm hoping that'll be one of the things that are added in the future. So I think there's over 100 resources right now, and they're being added quite continuously, which is really great to see. So there's links at the end, not as many as Stacy, but there's a good amount. And there's a list of all the resources that are there. So now to get to that chicken and egg kind of thing. So when I first approached this, this was probably last year, maybe a little sooner. Some of this stuff wasn't GA'd yet. But the problem is, same with most KRM things, you need a Kubernetes cluster to start. Right? Some people may be super familiar with Kubernetes. They like managing it. They're cool with everything. And then kind of the other end, you have people who just want to, here's my YAML, go do something. I don't want to know the machinations or how to secure a Kubernetes cluster, one of those things. So you have you have the stuff, the YAML, but you need a Kubernetes cluster first. That's our chicken and egg problem. So to go, you need a K8s cluster. And once you get a K8s cluster, you can start doing the fun stuff. So you need to kind of get there to have this to get there. The nice bit about Config Connector is you can install it in any CNCF compliant Kubernetes cluster. So you could go down to do something with Kind or Minikube, or if you've done something with KubeADM, or you have existing infrastructure. GCP makes it really easy. There's a little click checkbox to install Config Connector in existing Kubernetes clusters, or even spin up a new one. So that gives you the ability to deploy your infrastructure alongside your app in the same cluster. So if you want to have things really tightly bound, that's pretty cool. But from my perspective, I just want to give something. I don't want to manage another Kubernetes cluster. I just want to give something that YAML definition and for it to go off and do something. So take that weight and burden off my shoulders, just make me infrastructure. And that's where config controller comes in. So it's a hosted, or say a lightly hosted or managed platform. So it's Kubernetes GKE under the hood. but it comes preloaded with all the CRDs and also things like config management and policy controller. So you don't have to worry about installing those. It just, you spin it up with a G-Cloud command, and you get it, and you can start interacting with it like a Kubernetes cluster, or you can wire it up with Anthos config management and get that GitOps kind of pipeline. And the fun thing is here is when you get it up and running, you start, you get those reconciliation loops. So you say, I want a GKE cluster, it'll go and do it. Someone logs into the UI, changes it. GKE is going to do its best to, hey, that's not the state that you've given me. I'm going to try to overwrite it. Now, part of that, I'll show kind of how that works in the demo, just some resources I have set up that are fighting for supremacy right now, so you can see them kind of overwriting each other, which is pretty fun. So this is the command to get it up and running. So you can see it's a different command than what you get when you're booting up a Kubernetes cluster. And so it's with the Anthos API. It doesn't, I believe it requires an Anthos entitlement or a SKU. It's its own kind of thing. So you run this, you give it, then beyond this, you have to give it some permissions. So just make sure the IAM is correct. Most of the demos you see, they use the owner permission. In production, you're probably going to want to scope that a little bit more tightly. So if you want the controller to spin GKE clusters, just give it the permission to spin up GKE clusters, and then everything's happy, hopefully. So now that we kind of have all that, how do we kind of package up some of these things and deliver them to our environment? So, for example, I'm a platform admin, and we have a blessed version of Kubernetes we want teams downstream to be able to use. How can they start consuming that and deploying that to the clusters? And that's where our lovely tool Kept comes in, and that's Sean will take over right now.
Yep. Awesome, thanks, Chris. Just jump to the next slide.
Yep.
So kind of what is kept? For those that don't know, you'll hear it called kept, you'll hear it called KPT. We all seem to kind of bounce around on the name exactly, but the link is at the bottom for the actual site for the tool. So kept is a tool that Google's built kind of internally and exposed as an open source project. Really what it is you can think of it as sort of a packaging tool, but it's much more than that, right? So the screenshot you'll see on the screen is really right from the home page. I don't need to try to explain it any better than the team that builds this all day. So I basically just plagiarized what they did, to be honest with you. So it's a Git native schema-aware, extensible client-side tool for packaging, customizing, validating, and applying Kubernetes resources. So if that's not a mouthful and you didn't fully understand that, let's kind of dig into each one of those. If we go to the next slide, about exactly what does all that really mean behind the scenes. So go to the next slide. Excuse me. So kind of the core, I would say, of kept is that it is Git native. So it actually extends and sits over top of Git. So you can do sort of a lot of the packaging here within your Git repository. So all of these KRM resources that Chris talked about, right, that you're developing and you're explaining in your you want to save that somewhere and you want to put that in your Git repo, right? So kept isn't going to force some weird packaging mechanism on top of you. It's just going to use Git commands. But when we talk about packaging here in a second, it does more than just sort of a Git fetch, right? But it does work very, very closely with Git. So kind of on the concept of packaging, when we say schema aware, kind of on the top left there, when we're doing sort of a merge from, let's say, an updated source in your Git repo, and we're pulling it down using KPT or kept, what it'll actually do is it's not going to just override your resources. It actually compares, right? And because it's schema aware, it understands the CRDs that you're using, right, in your KRMs, and we'll actually kind of make sure we don't override that. And then we'll actually give you warnings to say that in your schema, in your KRM, you got something incorrect, or there's been a schema change, right? So it's more than just sort of a fetch and override and get the newest version. It'll keep your local dev in sync with the remote repository. So that's why it's schema aware. It understands all the CRDs. When kept says they're extensible, they're sort of kept is actually a very small package in the core of it, right? On the outside of it is all these custom functions that they build, and you can build your own custom function, right? So there's a lot of functions that have been built already, and that kind of goes to the customization part of it, so that if you want to customize kept, right, and you want to add sort of functions that fit your development cycles or your Kubernetes deployments, you can extend kept with your own functions. I'm going to come to packaging kind of last here, but we talk about validating. When you think of sort of DevOps, there's a lot of misconfiguration, and kept kind of uses the config as data paradigm. And we're going to talk about that here in a second, but when it goes through, and because it understands your CRDs and its schema aware, it'll actually validate, it'll do linting, it'll look at policy and security. It'll do all that for you when you do an apply. So it validates all that. And then you can add custom validators into sort of a pipeline mechanism to extend that as well. And then obviously it'll apply the resources to the cluster, right? It's kind of like your kubectl apply-f that Chris showed a couple slides ago. It does that as well. But one of the main cores is packaging. Why I saved it for the last is once you kind of build sort of your repository of resources, your KM resources, and you put it into a Git repository, right? You can use kept to kind of manage all that, and you can call a kept package, and we'll show that in a second, to pull that down, to do things, to validate it, to apply it, and then you can build packages under packages as well. There's kind of three core things, fundamental concepts in kept. So one is packages, one's functions, and one is workflows. So we'll talk about packages in depth here if we go to the next slide, please. Just got a slight delay. Cool. So like I said, packages are quite critical. To why I saved it for the last here is it jumps right into this slide nicely. So like I mentioned, it adheres to the configuration as data philosophy, where your configuration packages are these KRM resources that you create, and it's you're defining, because it's declarative, right? Like all Kubernetes resources, you're defining sort of what you want that state to look like. And then you bundle all these into a package, and you can put it into your Git repo. But you can also pull in other sub packages or packages from other sources into your package. So the example that the kept team puts on the site there is this WordPress example. You can see kind of at the top level, when you do a kept package tree WordPress is really the last one. It's just a folder on your local repo. So when you do the package get, it's going to save all the code into a folder, and that folder becomes your package. And you pull down all the files, but you'll see there is another MySQL package near the end of the tree here. And that is another package that could be in another Git repo. And if that package gets updated, you can then update your sub package, but it won't override any customizations you've done, which is really quite cool, right? Instead of just kind of fetching everything and blowing away everything you did, and now you got merge conflicts, and you're like, if I had hair, pull it out, right? Kept kind of manages that for you, which is like, it saved Chris and I a ton of effort and stuff as we're developing different services internally for some of our work. We're not blowing away each other's work. It's been fantastic in that regard. So packaging is kind of the core, but it's pretty easy. Again, TLDR, they're just folders on your local drive when you do the package get, and you can have packages under packages. So the demo will kind of show some of this as well. Go to the next slide, please, Chris. Second concept is sort of workflows or pipelines, if you want to call them that. This is a very general one we're showing here, which you would get the package using kept pack or KPT package get. So that'll pull down off the local or the remote Git repo, sorry. You may then explore it if it's a new package for you. I don't normally tend to do this myself because you've already looked at the Git repo. But anyway, you can explore it. You can do a KPT package tree, and it'll kind of show the previous slide, everything that's inside that packages and all the sub packages. But then you're going to want to go and edit it, right? And then you're going to go change these resources to match your environment. And in some cases, there is a sort of pipeline in there I'm going to talk about next, but that has like a setters file. You can think of like, and I hate to say this, but you can think of it like Terraform variables, right? If you use the Terraform, you can apply these setters, If you want to have custom functions or functions in there that want to set your namespace across all your KRM resources, you can go in and modify these so that the pipeline will do that work for you. And that's in the editing phase. Or you can go just modify the YAML files to meet exactly your environment, because you're never going to modify them again. You're not going to repackage this up 100%, right? Either way works. Then you can do a function render, which will then run through sort of your pipeline that's defined in what's called the KPT file. We'll talk about that in a second. And you can just kind of reiterate through that. There's many different workflow examples. I just wanted to show the really quick high-level one for today. And then we'll go to the last slide, or next two slides. To extend sort of CAPT and to build sort of these pipelines is everything's done in sort of these functions, right? Like I said, these functions will apply to your KRM resources on your local file system, right? So they're not going to run anything and change anything in sort of the remote package. It's all going to be done locally in your local file system. It's also not going to apply changes to your Kubernetes cluster until you actually go and apply it, right? So generally, there's more than these two categories, but the two main categories of functions are what we call mutators and validators. So mutator is just that. It's going to mutate or change something. Like I said, there's some very simple ones here from a mutator perspective. And it's the set namespace. So it'll go through and look at all of your KRM resources in your local file system that you're pointing it at. And its namespace, it's schema aware, so it understands where to put namespaces in. And you can also do custom namespaces. So if you've got a namespace sort of in something deep inside of your KRM resource file, you can go and say, here's the JSON path that I want you to do, or the YAML path that I want you to do, and apply the namespace. What I should call out, and I forgot to mention, is that functions are actually just small containers hosted on gcr.io, or if you have your custom one somewhere else, that get called. So CAPT actually relies on Docker. So it gets called, and then it executes sort of that code function inside of that container and brings in your files and a config file to modify that. It's better explained on the website. I didn't want to go into deep details on it, but just note that when you call a function, you can see here like gcr.io CAPT function set namespace, and then the image version, right? Everything's a Docker container. So it's kind of it pulls it down and runs it self-contained. Apply setters is a standard function for sort of, again, parameterizing anything you want, and use the standard $ name of a variable, or we go in setters and applies them. Something like qbeval, right? If you want to do sort of a validator, not just mutate before you apply anything in your pipeline, you can run qbeval and it'll apply everything, or validate everything within your schema. Next slide, please. So kind of my last thing on functions before actually the really good part, which is the demo. There's two types of functions. You can do it imperative, which means you just call it outright, like in the first example there at the top. You can use CAPT function eval. WordPress, again, is that folder or that package name. The image you're going to use, which is kind of the function. And then in this case, I'm applying or providing the namespace value into that function. So it'll go and set my WordPress namespace on all of my KRM resources. The other one is that sort of pipeline I keep talking about in a file with a CAPT with a capital K, that matters, a KPT file. There's no extension on that. And you can see here, it is just a standard YAML declaration. The metadata name is whatever you want. The kind is KPT file. Then you define your pipeline, and it'll just execute in order of top to bottom throughout that. You'll see there's something called config map. That's a way of passing data into the function or the image. Like in this case, app WordPress, I'm going to set that label across all my KRM resources. So the config map is just the key there for passing in that data. So that's kept it in, I mean, in a very high level nutshell. There's a lot more you could do with it, with custom functions. But I think you all want to see the demo. So I'm going to pass it back to Chris to get rid of his slides and get into the cool stuff.
Yeah, hopefully I don't fly too close to the sun. And all right, so I'm going to try to do Sean some justice with what we're showing here. And do let me know in the chat if things are too small. course, things are nice and big on my screen, but it doesn't always translate through the joy that is the internet.
That works.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacey. So what we're going to do today is we're going to deploy 2 clusters, an autopilot cluster and a standard GK cluster. Both are going to have their own networks, and the GK cluster will have a pub/sub service to capture the notifications coming out of the cluster. So I created this repo. Hopefully everything works on it. And so if you want to follow along, please do, or you want to hack away at it afterwards, have at it. So I didn't want to have this here and not have something to share with you all. So I'll just going to give a run through what's happening here. So I created 2 kept packages, and it's one of the nice, fun things is you can have multiple packages in one Git repo. So it's not a one-to-one relation, and it can identify through paths, which is pretty fun. So in the autopilot cluster here, so you can see I have the kept package get command right here. But most importantly here, I have the kept file and then the two YAMLs. So one for the autopilot cluster. You see there's a little bit more to it than the one I showed you earlier. And the reason for this is I'm making a private cluster. So I'm trying to be a little bit more security conscious of what I'm doing instead of just, hey, everyone on the internet can have at it. And then we have the networks down here. One of the things you'll note here is I have little kept sets. So this is what kept uses to indicate that, hey, this is going to be populated by this variable, and that's what's defined in the setters file. So when I go back there, I'll be able to see it. I just wanted to point out. So I'm setting pretty light in this file, just like a location, project ID, and pretty much it. So pretty light. I don't have sub packages, but it's something fun you can do. So over here in the kept file, we have our mutators. So this is going to go through and it'll apply those variables to where I've indicated that they need to go to. And then also I'm going to run kubeval just to make sure that the schema I'm submitting is valid. So everyone here who's been with Kubernetes probably, maybe over-indented or there's a typo in one of the keys. And then you have to wait until Kubernetes is like, hey, you did it wrong. Do it again, and then I'll fix it. I'll do it for you. So this catches that stuff early, so you don't have to wait or upset Kubernetes, and you get that response a little early. So following with what Stacey was saying earlier with shift left, and on that point, there is a function for gatekeeper. So if you want to write, say, infrastructure policy for what you're deploying, so let's say only things that are allowed, our company, we've decided we only want to be in Canada, so we're only going to allow you to deploy 2 regions in North America 1 and 2. So you can write a gatekeeper policy and have that within your repos. So when you do the kept function render, it will catch it there and then give you the error before you even try to submit it to your CI/CD or to the cluster, which gives you a lot of fun power. And then you don't need, the other cool part is you don't need a gatekeeper to be running in the cluster. It does it all locally. So you don't have to do that. Another chicken and egg thing where you need a cluster to run gatekeeper, it just does it all locally, which is really sweet. And then just come up over here, same thing in the kept file for, or pretty much the same thing in the kept file for GKE. I did notice as I was testing this, there was a bit of a schema difference between what the version of kubeval here and what the current version of KCC. So I can show you that, how it triggers and what kind of response it gives you when you put in inaccurate schema. And then we have the GKE cluster. So it's again, a little bit more than what you see with the autopilot cluster. And you can see I have a bunch of things turned on, got the notifications, and it's going to be pointing to this topic reference. And that topic gets created down here. So you can see there's the project and it's subbing everything in, and it's pretty light. You don't need to do it too much to create a pub sub topic, which is pretty awesome. So now for the fun part, and I just need to reload my shell because I let it time out. So this will just take a second, and knowing that everyone's watching, it's probably going to take a little longer than it usually does. Okay, so I got it down here. So I'm just going to go to my folder, and oops, sorry. That's the source for what I had deployed. Okay, so to kind of show you that I'm not doing any black magic or tricking anyone. So this folder is currently empty. And then over here, my Kubernetes clusters are, there will be 4 by the time we're done. I did create a backup solution just in case this doesn't work. I pre-deployed some stuff, so I have a fallback plan. And this cluster here is the config controller cluster I'll be deploying everything to. And this cluster is being provisioned from there. So actually, I'm going to have to reload this again because that is not coming up. Okay. Love it when computers get stage fright. Come on, internet. What's happening? Anyone have any questions? We conveniently wait for this to boot up.
We have nothing in the chat so far.
All right.
Chris.
I did add a note to the chat just for those that are aware. You can read it there, but kept is not required for KCC. We just use it a lot. Makes our lives easier for packaging and templating and kind of repurposing. Yeah, you don't need KPT or kept for KCC.
Yeah, and you can also use it to bundle Helm or customize things as well. So it doesn't really care what you're doing underneath. It's just a way of it's a really interesting way of distributing it. So if Helm is your choice at the end of the day, you can do that too. Huh, I was not expecting the shell to be the thing. Oh, there we go. Sweet. It's giving me a little, oh no, things are going to implode. Nothing like doing a live demo. All right, so here's the folder I'm going to be creating everything in. And then I'm just going to grab some of the commands. Actually, I'll do that so you can see it instead of pulling off a hidden screen. So what I'm doing here is copying the package get. And you notice at the end, what you can do is you can target the branch or even the tag. So if you're a package manager or you're trying to distribute things, you can set different versions for people to tag into. So as they do new releases, new versions, it's a nice way to kind of keep things tracked. There we go. So I'm going to pull that down, and yay, we have our GKE standard. Am I right? I am in the wrong folder. So I might just overread something. CD live. Okay, so let's do that again. And I will deal with that mess later. That's mine. Perfect. So we saw just the folder popped up. And we'll see here. And then there's everything you just saw in the repo. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for our autopilot cluster. Let's copy this. So at the very least, one of the things I really like about this is a really easy way to distribute YAML. Instead of having to do all the git clone and all that fun stuff, you just, hey, I want to get this, and it pulls it down, and you can toggle things with it, which is pretty spiffy. So here we have both of them ready to go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my project name. Probably should have done that on another screen, but here we are. So I'm going to change the setter files with the new name. And same thing with GK standard. Let's give it the target. Okay, so that's done. So now what I have to do is, before I do the kept live apply, which is the way that we're going to apply it, or tell kept to send things up to the cluster, just need to initialize the package. And I'm just going to just go into it, GKE autopilot init. And we're going to deploy everything here into the config control namespace, because that's what I've given permission to deploy to this project. And it's got workload identity and everything wired up, which is pretty fun. So you don't have to pass around keys and security accounts and, or sorry, service accounts and all that fun stuff. So it's done. It's rendered that. And I'm going to go back and do the exact same thing for GK standard. Yeah, so I could have done this both as one big package with sub packages, but I thought it'd be way more interesting just to do it in two, so you can see how they can coexist if you're deploying different different packages for the same cluster. Doesn't really impact each other. So now I'm going to do kept function render, and this is going to take. So I'm going to go over here to the cluster, just so you can see this overwrite. GKE. So it's going to run through, and just say to authorize the shell. And I'll just take a second, and here we go. What did I do wrong? I think I needed to be in the directory. Or I'm just looking at the wrong file. There we go. Problem with having too many folders. There we go. And there we go. It finally changed. So it went through, it did its magic. Now that I edited the actual proper file. So that's key. So that's the pro tip for today. Make sure you're in the right directory with the right file. And then I can do the exact same thing here. Function GKE autopilot. And it's going to do, so it's telling you exactly what's going on down here, which is pretty nice. So if I go here, it should be, once it goes through the Q-val, it should change everything there. There we go. So it's up to date. So now we have, we're pretty sure everything's good to go. We can do our kept live apply. And GKE autopilot. And so this is going to do, it's going to kind of stay alive while everything reconciles. So it's going to make our connection, it's going to do everything. So being that this is going to wait. So it takes normally a few minutes for everything to start, boot up, reconcile, and do all its loops. So once this goes, so you can say, hey, I've created the network, created that. And then when I go create a new tab, so you can see here, the autopilot cluster's up, and the reconcile is pending because it's waiting for some stuff to go live. And I am aware that we're running low on time, so I'm going to kind of speed through this. So I'm just going to, get. So you can see here the cluster is, hey, I'm waiting. The dependency isn't ready, and it's waiting for the network to go live. So I can do the Kubernetes describe container cluster. Let's find out what's wrong. So it's saying, hey, my subnet isn't ready. If I went to get, was it compute subnetwork? So it's just updating. So it's coming live. Slowly but surely, it'll be there. And while that's going, I'm just going to GDG demo live. Yes. Apply. GK. And then it's going to do the exact same thing. So it's going to create the network. It's going to create the cluster. So if we go back here, it'll take a minute or two for it just to kind of sort out. So there's our cluster right now coming up. And then if I were to go look at my networks, I'll go over here. Where's my VPC network? Internet load. So you can see here, it's created the cluster plus the subnet. And then it's just doing all the reconciliation in the back end, getting it up and running. Things have been tested. So if I go back here to my shell, so my guess is it's just waiting for that subnetwork to actually come up. So you can see here, it's reconciled the subnet or the VPC. So it'll just be another minute or two for that to go live. So that's what I want to show. Just like you can do things in a Kubernetes native way, manage your infrastructure. If you're doing other other things. Like for this one here, I have it wired up with Anthos config management. So I'm deploying Falco in a Git repository, and I have it all scoped out with with KCC. So you can do all kinds of Anthos related things, and IAM and stuff as well. So you can see here now the cluster is finally up. And then if I were to go in there and change that or do something there, like say I deleted it, it would take a few minutes in the Kubernetes world, and then it would try to reconcile and get that back up and running. So just
one of the things that's really interesting here, Chris and I both absolutely adore and love, is that in sort of the Terraform world, the T word is you do a live destroy, it blows away everything, or you got to go manage your state file and rip out a bunch of state, right? In this case, Chris just showed he could go and pull out that one Kubernetes resource from KCC, use your standard kubectl, delete that resource. KCC will then go remove the GCP single resource. You don't got to blow away your whole environment, right? So with one command, you can remove a single errant resource, or you mess something up in your YAML.
Yeah.
I mean, it has made my life so much easier applying sort of infrastructure as code.
Yeah. Yeah, so and the other fun thing is the reconciliation bit. So I do have two systems kind of fighting over organization policies. So you can see some of these are good organization policies. So it's been up for 46 hours because I tried to be somewhat prepared. But you can see here we have some other policies that are being overwritten by another system. And now my system is like, no, that's not the desired state that I have. So it's going and applying that. So for drift detection, this is really quite powerful to make sure that everything that I've deployed is as I say it should be. So again, taking that, like, this is the data that I have, this is the data I need, and I'm going to use Kubernetes persistence to make sure that that is what is actually deployed. And that to me is something really powerful. And then you can start coupling with Gatekeeper and all those other Kubernetes security goodies to double down, do some really cool policy work, make sure that there's, from that perspective, things don't drift or are compliant with whatever regulatory needs that your company or organization needs to adhere to from an infrastructure plan, which is super cool. And that's always kind of doing that.
Cool. I saw there was a question from Archie regarding, like, can you use something like customize instead of kept?
Customize instead of kept? I would use customize and kept. I don't think it's an either or. Kind of thing. And same with if I said something like package and modules, I wouldn't draw that quite. I see where you're coming from. It's not quite the same. I was trying to deconstruct some Terraform module stuff, and it feels like customized bases and layers fit that mode more. So you'd have kind of store your configs, then you do customize with bases and have a directory for that, and then kind of say your different GKE environments based off of those templates. So I think that gets you closer to the module bit that Terraform offers.
Thanks, Chris. There's another question that I think I accidentally pressed as answered. It's coming from Ashish Goel, and he's asking, is there a picture for the introduction of KCC given Terraform and Cloud Deployment Manager do good job already in infra provisioning space? And if you have your version of the answer, that would be great.
It's kind of like about why this where the others exist and have like a strong presence already.
Yeah, my kind of go-to, like if you're already down the road with Terraform and you're happy, awesome, that's great. The benefit for me and what I see is that the on-ramp is a lot easier with this, being that you're just dealing with a ton of configuration files. And the goodness that you get with Kubernetes, right? That reconciliation action, like Terraform is, you have to do it imperatively, right? It's like, I have a change, now I need to go change, and then you find something maybe is drifted from your initial state. Where when you're in the Kubernetes model, you have that constant reconciliation. So if you're very in deep with Kubernetes and you want those Kubernetes kind of features to help manage your infrastructure, that's where I would choose that. I've never got too far down onto the Cloud Deployment Manager, so I can't really speak to that. It was Terraform first, and then when KCC came out, it was like, this is So I skipped right over deployment manager. And this is
So what I would say, I've done a lot of work in deployment manager. I'm not sure how to put this correctly. I find it not the easiest tool to use, to be honest with you. So there's the templating in it, sort of the writing of the code. Again, a lot of infrastructure people are not Python writers. So you got to kind of know that to write that. And again, it doesn't go back to, you'll see Google's making a big movement toward this sort of configuration as data model, which is the Kubernetes model. And I think you'll see a lot of our solutions go down that path. So deployment manager was a good stopgap in my mind. I think KCC will be sort of the go forward. Terraform's got great coverage. It's also 18 years old as a technology. So we're just kind of updating sort of the declarative model to meet everything that way. That's my take on it.
Cool.
And if you would, want to deploy something,
it's a big buildup.
Yeah. Like it's building the tension. Yeah. Arch has been having issues like dropping in and out, so that may be one of them.
Tubes are full in this neighborhood.
Yeah. So I see your clusters are all like everything is reconciled and everything is good.
Everything's up. One of the fun things I should show you. So with both Falco and then the demo cluster is the pub sub bit. Because everything should be kind of lights up, goes right there. So the other cool thing is you don't have to touch Kubernetes too much, right? It kind of hides that away from people. I'm hoping some of that stuff gets a little bit better. So instead of worrying about K8s, you just worry about your configs, give it to K8s, and it does its magic without having to know what's going on the back end. That's another kind of difference for me with Terraform is I don't really need to understand how code works. I can just, here's my config. It's pretty straightforward. I don't need to worry about loops. There are advantages to that, mind you. It's just for people who are new to infrastructure as code, the cognitive jump isn't as big. So you can see here, hopefully I've done something wrong and Falco is picking it up and letting me know that I've done something terrible. Oh, I haven't done anything terrible today. So if I did, there would be some things in there.
That's good.
But it's there, it's provisioned, it's all hooked up, which is really neat and cool. So I can go back to topics here and see that, both of those systems are up and running. So that VPC cluster, I didn't create a subscription for it, but I could go and just kind of click my way to doing that if I have permissions, which I hope I did. Now I won't go through that process, but yeah, everything's up. It's really, really cool and quite exciting. Oh, I think Archie got his question there.
Yeah, I think you put another question in the chat, and then just to be mindful of time also. Yes, is there a place where one can find KCC packages that are already built and tested for end use, for example, like create GCP landing zone?
Yes, so there is some
project
stuff.
factory with.
There's a blueprint factory, or I don't know if factories were, but there's a blueprint, KCC blueprints. So I'll drop the link here. So we have, if you're on the config management or config controller page, you do have a list for blueprints. Here we go, KRM blueprints. And then, where is it? Need to find a link to the
landing zone KRM blueprint, right? Yeah, at the bottom. Yeah.
Blueprints are very, very prescriptive. I mean, they're a blueprint. This is how the team that makes these expect things to be set up. I'm just to also answer Archie's question. I know we're at time, we're way over time. Is that wait for some exciting news. Hopefully, I don't have an exact drop dead date, but there is some pretty interesting stuff coming down the pipe. And I can say that because Chris and I are making it. So that will hopefully answer this question very, very succinctly as well.
Yeah, it's a very government perspective. Regulated. Yeah. So to get going, this is one of the things we have right now.
Cool. Awesome. That's good. So yeah, so we're a bit over time, but that's fine. Thanks for the great intro. I think that's really interesting. Of course, if somebody says, "Hey, well, I don't do Ks and all we do is something else," so well, okay, maybe don't go there, but or maybe yes, that could be like it's not because you're not doing like deploying stuff straight into Ks. It's if you're using autopilot to keep your life simple, deploying that cluster, then you can leverage that tool because you don't have to worry about Ks itself. You're just focusing on what it can do, and then just like provision pops up topics, do whatever, create a network, whatever you need. But it's like Terraform also, right? Chicken and the egg also, or like I need the resource to create the resource, right? So I like how can I need a bucket to put my state file, right? Okay, well I still need to create a project to create the bucket so I can move my state from. Well, you need to start somewhere, right? So
yeah. So like in this world, it's a config controller is like your state file, but you have it's a Kubernetes powered state file.
So okay, so we'll quote you on that in the future.
Put that on my LinkedIn profile header.
Yeah, exactly. So cool. So just wrapping things up quickly. Just gonna make sure everything is there. Cool. So just quickly, I just put all the links that were in the chat also inside the slides. So everything that was shared by Sean and Chris. So you can go and to your art contempt if you want to spend time with your family, looking through the links this weekend. Be at it. So Clark cluster, no problem. Thanks, Sean. And so we're wrapping this up. So again, like thanks everybody. We're a bit over, but it's fine. I think it was a great session. Again, thanks, Chris. Thanks everyone. Like any of the well, well, of course we're gonna have a Q2 event. So let's say April, May, June. Like let's target maybe when it's at. Well, I would love to be able to do something in real life back again, or maybe hybrid. Bevy allows us to actually do hybrid sessions where we can bring in people remotely through, and so that would be super cool. So we're looking into this again. If you want, like from the initial slides that were going on, it's like if you can go through our LinkedIn page or anything. If you want to actually submit a talk, there's a link. You can actually reach us. Say, hey, I would love to present on something. I would love to have actually like real life users talking about their experience with GCP. That's what we're all about. The fact that we're remote right now, we're kind of bringing in a lot of Googlers that have a lot of great topics to talk about, but also we'd love to hear about users because this is what we're about. So would love to hear your stories and would just go ahead and submit. Not a problem. We'll help you out if you need anything. More than happy to. So just to wrap things up, it's QR code and the link there. It's a little survey. So just want to know, provide feedback on like the way things are going. So well, Stacy talks too much. That's not cool. Like just submit that as a survey. That's fine. I'm used to that. But just give us feedback. Topics you would love to hear us talk about. Right now we've been like picking them up on our brains. Oh, okay, we're going to talk about this. This could be cool. But there's something we've completely missed out, or maybe go back to basics for some of the of our members. Would love to do that, but we need your input. So if you have the time, fill in the survey. And so that's we're wrapping it up. It's 1:10 Eastern. So thanks everyone again for joining us for this Q1 meetup for GDG Cloud Montreal, and we'll see you in Q2, maybe in real life. You never know. So again, thanks everyone. Have a great day, and see you soon.
Thanks, Stacy.
Problem.